Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu wa sallama ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Allahumma la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Allahumma 'allimna ma yanfa'una wa nafa'na bima tu'allimna wa zidna min fadlika ilman wa ta'liman innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So today is our ninth session and 17th fast, mashallah. And we're going to start Surah Yusuf today, which is the 12th chapter of the Qur'an. And it is one of the Makki surahs. And you'll know last session we did the Surah Hud, in which we looked at 7 prophets. So we are continuing our stories of the prophets in that, but we're also looking at the tafsir, a short tafsir of Surah Yusuf, inshallah, in this session and in the next one, inshallah. So if you want to take your Qur'ans out and follow along the verses, then we're going to start at the beginning, so you can do that with this surah, inshallah. And you most likely you've heard this story before, because it's one of the most famous stories in the Qur'an. And the theme of this Surah Yusuf is, what are the themes that are generally running through their interpretation of dreams. And so we'll briefly look at what dreams are, and according to Islam, and how we interpret dreams, and understanding the ta'wil and excellence of virtue, ihsan, because many times in this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls Yusuf alayhi salam for the muhsineen. So who are the muhsineen? Who are these people who have ihsan? And ihsan, as you know, is a concept of Islam. We've looked at Iman and we've looked at Islam through our surahs, and so in this surah we'll be looking at ihsan. And ihsan is excellence. Normally is translated as excellence, like when Jibreel alayhi salam came to the Prophet sallam in the famous hadith of Jibreel, he talks about Iman and Islam and then ihsan, and he explains to the Prophet sallam what ihsan means. So we'll be looking at this concept of ihsan through this surah, inshallah. And the general outline of this surah is that the Quran is so that people can understand it, and that this story, the story of Joseph, is the best and most beautiful ahsan of all stories. And again, this word ihsan, ahsan. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that it's the best of all stories. And this is the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. Most people do not understand, but that this story contains guidance and mercy to believers. So this story is not just the story that, from beginning to end, you read it like a novel, but it actually contains lots of guidance and mercy for the believers. In fact, when we go through it, you'll see that a lot of human psychology is covered, and also things that we already know inside us, but we're reluctant to accept. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points it out to us in this surah. And this surah also teaches us that the path of the Prophet ﷺ and those with him is one of insight, is of basira. So people who follow the Prophet ﷺ and Prophet ﷺ's path itself is one of insight, meaning looking into things deeply and seeing far, not just looking at the apparent, but the opposite, that you look into something very deeply and you go far into it. That's what basira means. And so in this, I'm just going to do a brief summary, because we're going to go through this tafsir fairly quickly, and normally it would take weeks to go through and look at everything, but because we're doing it, they're not really tafsir lessons, but more like conversations of what's in the Quran. I would just want to do a summary so you get an idea, so when we go into it, it's easier. So this story is about Yusuf al-Islam's vision, that he has a vision. He he has a dream, and then he tells his father Yaqub alayhi salam about it. And the interpretation is actually the story of the whole surah. So basically, if you think about this surah, if you want to see a summary of this surah, what is it about? It's about a dream, which is Yusuf alayhi salam's dream, and the interpretation of that dream is the whole story. How the dream plays out, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows them everything that has happened in that dream. And just on the topic of dreams, very briefly, we have been told in the hadith that true dreams, there's three types of dreams. One is a true dream, one is a dream from the shaitan, which is a false dream, and the third is a dream of normal occurrences, what we're thinking about during the day, and then we think about that. So there's three levels of dreaming. So the true dream is what we're looking at here. And the true dream, in the hadith, we've been told that it is 1/40th of prophethood. What this means is that after the Prophet ﷺ, nobody can get wahi, because wahi's doors close with our last prophet, Muhammad ﷺ. Anybody who comes afterwards and says that they got wahi from Allah is a liar, right? Because Allah has told us that our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the last prophet. However, we talked about this idea of ilham before. How does Allah communicate with human beings? So human beings normal human beings can get ilham. Ilham means inspiration from Allah. So we can either have this in wakeful hours, somebody, you could be praying or something like that, or not even praying, but you get a beautiful thought, and it's a true thought, and you will recognize it, that this is a true thought, or an idea or something that you need to do. Or you can get it in your dream. And dream one is very common too. Unfortunately, most people are not in touch with their dream world, because they have a dream but they don't pay attention to it, or sometimes they will not write the dream down, and so they miss parts of the dream. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can communicate with us through dreams. And like I said, there's three categories. And in the true dream, how will we know it's a true dream? Because your heart will tell you that this is a true dream, right? If it wasn't scary, you didn't forget it wasn't a flashback. If it's a true dream, most of the time you can go walk back into it years later, even 20-30 years later, you can walk straight back into that dream and see it vividly, what you saw at that time. That's the mark of a true dream. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives glad tidings in true dreams. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what to do. Maybe he consoles us. In true dreams, you can be shown your place in Jannah. In true dreams, you can meet Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if you meet and see the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then that is a true dream, because in the hadith it says that the shaitan cannot take the place of or imitate the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So dreams is a whole different world, and its interpretation is a science in itself. So not everybody can interpret a dream. Very few people can interpret dreams. But having said that, when you see a dream, you can stand back and you can also see what was in that dream. That means even though you can't do a true interpret or a full interpretation, you will know in your heart what that dream means. So you can even make that interpretation, or we won't call it an interpretation, because the other thing about dreams is that we should not interpret our dreams. If you see a very good dream and you don't know what it means, just leave it. Just leave it and let it interpret itself. Because once you interpret the dream, it's like you pluck the fruit off the tree. And once you pluck it, you can't put it back. So once the interpretation has been made, then that is what will happen. So that's the other thing, that we should be very careful about who we narrate our dreams to. Sometimes we can put it in front of somebody who's careless with it. They might make fun of it or say something stupid about it. So that's why we should not narrate our dreams. When you know it's a true dream, you shouldn't narrate it just in front of anybody. If you want to narrate it, then you find somebody who will not interpret it straight away. And if you go to somebody who knows that, if they don't know what it means or they can't see it clearly, they'll tell you very clearly, I can't see the interpretation of this dream. Or even if they can see it and they might not want to tell you because it might not be good for you to know. You might not be in a position to take that interpretation. So sometimes they will say something like, well, why don't you go and do sadaqah? Go and give sadaqah. Or if you need to, is there's something in your life that you need to fix, go and fix it. So you should just take that as an interpretation and go and do it, because don't delve too deep into what does this mean now. Your heart will tell you, and trust your heart with what it's telling you, but don't go too deep into it. So that's just a brief thing about the science and art. It's also an art, and those people who interpret dreams, by the way, they have knowledge of the Quran. So they interpret it, is interpreted through the verses of the Quran. For example, they look at symbols and past references and what they mean, and it's like a mirror. They look inside the Quran and then they on the Hadith, and then they interpret it like that. So it's a very big art, and not every scholar is going to have that art as well. It's a very select few whom this gift is given to. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So let's go into the story. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It's a very fascinating story, and it's said that this is the only surah which has, uh, it's unique in that it contains a complete unified story of one person from beginning to end, from childhood to death, and that is Yusuf alayhi salam. And it's the only surah in the Quran that deals with one personage and his family. That means we meet an entire family. It's almost like getting to know the whole family in this surah. And um, he is mentioned by name. Yusuf alayhi salam is mentioned by name, and he's only mentioned. His whole story is only mentioned in this one surah. Like the other prophets, they might be mentioned here and there, and Yusuf alayhi salam will only be mentioned by name in passing in other places, but his whole story is mentioned in this surah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls this the most beautiful story, and it's the only story which got that title. So Allah is saying something. And this surah also has this unique verse about knowledge, that where Allah tells us, and it's going to come much later, where Allah tells us that we raise by degrees whom we will, and above every man of knowledge is one who knows better. That means that it's going to be verse 76, and maybe we'll do that tomorrow, but it's a verse which says that people have knowledge, and then over them there'll be somebody else who has more knowledge, and over them there'll be somebody else who has more knowledge. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives knowledge in degrees to people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala contains the only verse where Allah says that the Quran gives the details of all things. So in this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that Allah in the Quran, it tells us that in the Quran that there is a detail of everything. That means if you find, remember in our first session we were talking that the Quran has everything in it. So this is the verse comes in this surah which says that that the tafsir of everything is in the Quran. You just have to find it. Now, what is the story about? So the story is about victory and triumph for Yusuf alayhi salam, and what does it do for us? Because remember we said how we have to reflect into the story. So the big thing that it does for us is that it gives us hope, and we are as a society and individually, we are afflicted by so many emotions, and so much of our life is led by this emotion-based idea that we use our emotions for so many things. So this story, it really delves into the human psychology, and it gives us hope. And anybody who reads and reflects on this story, it'll be a source of great comfort for us and a solace. It will be a source of great comfort and solace. And it gives direction for modern society. So it's a very modern story as well, as you'll see. Right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So let's go right into this into the surah. As you know, time is very short, and we just have to move along because there's so much more that we can go into. But let's go into the story. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So this surah, Surah Yusuf, it starts with Alif Lam Ra. Tilka ayatul kitab al-mubin. These are the verses of the clear book. And Alif Lam Ra, you know the huruf muqatta'at. We don't know the true meaning of them. So Allah says, these are verses of the clear book. Again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling this a clear book. Inna anzalnahu Qur'anan Arabiyyan la'allakum ta'qilun. Undoubtedly, we have revealed it as an Arabic Quran so that you may understand. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that we reveal this as an Arabic Quran because the people that it came down to, they were Arabs. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that we revealed it in Arabic so that you may understand. We narrate to you a most beautiful story in this Quran that we reveal to you. So it's called Ahsan al-Qasas. That is the most beautiful story that we reveal to you. Before this, you were of the unwary. And this is to Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, speaking directly to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the Sahaba, that before this, if we didn't reveal this story to you, then you would not have known it, right? Because you haven't got any of the other scriptures, you haven't read them, but we are giving you this, and this is a proof for you, as we'll see further. So, verse 4 it says, when Yusuf said to his father, "O my father, indeed I have seen 11 stars, the sun and the moon all prostrating to me." So, what does he say? Yusuf alayhi salam is a boy of about, we would say, 12, between 12 and 15. Some Mufassirin have said even younger than that. But we can put him if you put him in the middle, then we would say about 12, 13. So he said to his father, "O my father, indeed I have seen 11 stars, the sun and the moon all prostrating to me." So he sees a dream in which there are 11 stars, the sun and the moon, and they're all doing sajda to this young boy, Yusuf. So he tells his father the dream. His father said, "O my beloved son, do not relate this dream to your brothers, otherwise they will plot against you." So his father immediately, who is a prophet, tells him that do not tell your brothers because they will plot against you. That means they will make a plan and they will try to do something against you. Now, let's just look at the genealogy that Yusuf alayhi salam is the son of Yaqub, who is the son of Ishaq, who is the son of Ibrahim. And we did this story in the last session. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he is given the glad tidings of a son by the angels, and he is of an old age at that time. So that is that son Ishaq, who in turn has a son called Yaqub. And it said that in some narrations in the tafsir it says that there were two brothers, and these two brothers, in some places it says they were twins, but these two brothers, Yaqub and his brother, and then he has a son, Yusuf alayhi salam. And just a quick tafsir of that is, it said that Yaqub alayhi salam and his brother, and maybe these are Israeli riwayats, because but it is mentioned by Ibn Kathir that they have a conflict, and so his mother, Yaqub alayhi salam's mother, she tells him that you go away to my brother. That means go and stay with my brother. So he goes and stays with Yaqub alayhi, he goes and stays with his uncle, his maternal uncle. And when he goes there, then he lives in that household, and his uncle has two daughters whose names are Rachel and Leah, Rahil in Arabic. And so he likes the younger one, Rahil, and he asks the uncle when he comes of age to marry this daughter. So the uncle agrees with this, and he says, "If you work for me for so many years, then I will let you marry this daughter." And so he works with him, and the day comes when he can marry him. So in the marriage, he is given the other daughter. So when in the morning, he finds out that he actually got married in the night to the other daughter, Leah. And so he goes back to the uncle and he says that you tricked me. So his uncle tells him that it is not our tradition that we marry the younger daughter before the older daughter. And so he says, if you work with me for so many more years, and I will give you this daughter in marriage too. And it was okay at that time for two sisters in their Sharia to get married to the same man. So then he works for so many years, and then he gets married to Rachel as well. Now Leah has children, and she is not the beautiful one, but Allah compensates by giving her lots of sons. So he has many sons from Leah, and he doesn't have any children after he marries her from Rachel for a long time, but he gets 10 sons from Leah. Now, even in this, it's said that all the 10 sons were not from Leah herself, but from the father had given both Rahil and Leah, both of them slave girls. So both of these slave girls, they give us gifts to Yaqub alayhi salam. And so from them, the sons come. So, Wallahu alam, but there are 10 sons. So it's quite possible that these 10 sons came from 3 women. That means the 2 slave girls, and then from Leah. And then Rachel gets pregnant, and she has a son, and that son is Yusuf. She has a very beautiful son after many years, and that son is Yusuf. And then after Yusuf, she has another son who is called Benjamin. So Rachel then has 2 sons, and Leah has 10 sons. Or if we take the version that the 2 slave girls had them, so all these 12 brothers altogether are from 4 women, or they're from 2 women. The 2 sisters, Rachel and Leah, or if we take the version of the slave girls as well, then they are from 4 women. But not to confuse it, what we have to understand is that there are 10 who are from one side, and then there are 2 who are whose mother is different, whose mother is Rahel or Rachel. And so Yusuf and Binyamin are real brothers, and this is important because in the story we'll see why. And the other 10 are, we'll assume that they're from one mother. So in this dream, he sees this dream, and the father says to him, do not relate this dream to your brothers, otherwise they will plot against you. Undoubtedly, devil, shaitan, is a manifest enemy unto man. So Yaqub alayhi salam is an old, and he is a wise man, and he is a prophet, and he understands that this dream is something very big for this boy. And so he tells him, he advises him, he says, don't tell your brothers, because in his mind he's already interpreted the dream. And so he knows that his brothers could harm him. And so he says to the boy that don't tell them. And so in this manner, verse 6, in this manner has your Lord chosen you, taught you the interpretation of dreams, and completed his bounty upon you and the family of Yaqub, just as he had completed it upon your 2 forefathers, Ibrahim and Ishaq. Indeed, your Lord is all-knowing, the wise. Right. And so this is how the story starts, and we see that he has the dream. Right, and there is is this story significant in the Prophet ﷺ's life? The verses came down, and it says that this story, as well as others, indicate that the Holy Prophet ﷺ was indeed the Prophet of Allah, because because being unlettered, it was not possible that he could have learnt of these incidents from anyone but Allah. And even the Jews and the Christians realized this fact. However, most of them refused to accept, although some of them did accept Islam after the revelation of Surah Yusuf. And in Darul Manthur, it is written from Bayhaqi, a narration of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, in which he says that a certain Jewish scholar heard the Holy Prophet ﷺ reciting Surah Yusuf. Then he asked the Holy Prophet ﷺ who had taught him this. The Prophet ﷺ replied that Allah had taught it to him. He left and went to some other Jews, telling them that the Holy Prophet ﷺ was reciting what was revealed in the Torah. He then took them all to the Prophet ﷺ, where they recognized him to be the final prophet according to what they had read in their scriptures. The Prophet ﷺ recited for them Surah Yusuf, whereupon they were all taken aback and accepted Islam. So we can see that this was a mercy that some Jews also came and they listened to this surah, and they understood that we have this exact same surah in our book, And how can this man who is unlettered be reciting in so much detail this story? And they accepted the Quran. They already knew that Prophet ﷺ was true because it was written in their book. But when they heard this surah, they accepted Islam as well. And you know that Yaqub alayhi salam's other name is Israel. So this is also a historical point that Yaqub alayhi salam, and he has the 12 sons that we've just mentioned. So these are called the Bani Israel. That means all their descendants will be known now as the Bani Israel, and they will come down from these 12 sons. Right. So verse 7, surely in the story of Yusuf and his brothers are more signs for the questioners. When the brothers said, verily, Yusuf and his brother are more beloved to our father than us, even though we are a large group. Indeed, our father is in manifest error. So the brothers say this, that Yusuf al-Islam, being a young boy, he tells his brothers this story, and when they hear it, suddenly they know that this is something very significant, and they also interpret it. So they also understood, like by the numbers, they understand that there's 11 stars that are doing sajda. Who are the 11 stars and the sun and the moon? So they also interpret this story, and so the brothers, they said, verily, Yusuf and his brother are more beloved to our father than us, even though we are a large group. Indeed, our father is in manifest error. So the shaitan comes and plays with them, and they have a stab of jealousy. They think to themselves that, look, we are a large number and we are grown men and we are more useful and beneficial to our father. And you know that in those days, especially until very recently, the whole point of having lots of sons was that they would be beneficial to the father, and they would be beneficial to the father, to the whole family, because they would reap and plow the lands and bring the food in and do the physical work. And so they reminding themselves that we are a large group and we are beneficial to our father, and yet our father would favor um, his other son. He's going to favor Yusuf, and maybe Yusuf al-Islam has told them that their father has told them told him not to tell them the dream as well, as children do. Children always speak the truth, and you can't censor a lot of what children say because they're very innocent, so they are used to telling things as they are. And so perhaps he has told them that, but this is not good news for Yusuf, because in verse 9 it says, kill Yusuf or throw him in a distant land, after which the attention of your father will be reserved for you only. Thereafter you can be fortunate people. So this has gone so deep inside them, and think about it, they're grown men, but this jealousy of their brother and this hatred for their brother has gone deep inside. And this is something that is human psychology, that when jealousy and hatred enter a heart, they can do very destructive things. Because look at how they're talking. They're saying, kill Yusuf or throw him in a distant land. So they're ready to kill him, right? And their reasoning is that after this, when we get rid of him, then we will have all the unreserved attention of our father. He'll be for us alone, and then we'll be a blessed people because we will have all his attention. Because they're thinking ahead as well, because they're thinking, if the father is thinking like this about the son now, imagine what he'll think about him in the future, when he's a grown man. So they're thinking all of these thoughts. So one of them said, do not kill Yusuf, but throw him in a dark well, so that some travelers may take him away if you really intend doing something. So the eldest of the brothers, when they're doing this shura, this consultation, the eldest says, no, we shouldn't kill him, because then we will have committed a crime. So we will be guilty. But how about we do something that we can get rid of him so he goes away from us? And if we really want to do something, then let's throw him in the well so that some travelers can come and they can take him, and that will be good for us, because at least we will be absolved of the crime. We won't have committed that crime. And so it's said in the tafsir that this brother was called Rubil. He was the eldest brother. And it's Ibn Kathir reports from Sayyidina Qatada that this was the opinion of the eldest brother, whose name was Rubil, since Allah had intended great things for Sayyidina Yusuf in the future. His opinion was accepted. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it in their hearts that they shouldn't kill him. And so this opinion was accepted. And um, uh, another interpretation of thereafter you can be fortunate people, Ibn Kathir translates this as you can be a righteous people. That means you won't have to live with the crime on your head that you killed your brother, because crime is very heavy, right? Sins and crime are very heavy. That they people you'll see in the world, they sometimes they carry these crimes and punishments and sins on their shoulders, and it bends them. Sometimes it physically bends these people because they can't even stand up straight because these crimes are so big, and so they didn't want to live with these crimes. So they said, verse 11, they said, "O our father, what ails you that you do not trust Yusuf with us, whereas we are his well-wishers? Send him with us tomorrow so that he may eat and play with us. We shall take good care of him." So the brothers, they make a plan and they say, we should go out for a day out. We'll go hunting and we'll have a picnic. And, and maybe they were accustomed to doing this because they were hard workers. And so for them, a day out was a day of rest and relaxation. And so they go to their father and they say, let us take Yusuf with us so that he can also relax and we can all we can all play and eat and have a good time. And they say to him, why don't you trust us with Yusuf? So maybe they've had this conversation with their father before, or maybe the father is saying, no, I don't want him to go, because they're saying to the father that we are his well-wishers, we are his brothers, so you should trust us. Verse 13, he said, this the father is saying, indeed it grieves me that he should go with you. I fear that you would be negligent of him, and that then a wolf would devour him. They replied, if a wolf should devour him while we are a strong group, then we would surely be at a loss. So the father says two things. He says that it grieves me that he should go with you, because it makes me sad. I don't want to part with him. He's my son, and I don't want to even a date that he's out of my sight. So I don't. That's the one reason, and which is very understandable. And then this, because it would be a common fear that parents, they don't like to put their children in a position where they don't have control over them. And the second thing is that I fear that you will be negligent and that a wolf would devour him. That I fear that you're going to get busy, and he says it diplomatically that I fear that a wrong can come from you, but he's saying it very diplomatically. He's saying that I fear that you will be negligent. That means you'll get busy with your playing and everything, and the wolf will come and it will eat him up, right? So and he's a prophet, he's talking like this, but did he think that perhaps the wolves were the sons, that they would cause him harm, not a real wolf? Was he talking about a symbolic wolf here? So he's a prophet and he's talking like this to them. They replied, if a wolf should devour him while we are a strong group, then we would surely be at a loss. So they say to the father that, we're such a strong group of 10 men, right? And we're so strong, and we have brawn on our side. So why are you afraid that we can't defend our little brother from a wolf? If a wolf comes, then we would be the losers if we lost our brother like this, right? So there's lots of lessons to learn in this. One of the lessons, and we'll go in the end, inshallah, we will go over the lessons, but one of the lessons is that if you have a fear about something, you shouldn't reveal it to other people, because they can play on your fears, right? So when you fear something, and this is human psychology, that you should not reveal your fears onto others, because others can pick up on your fears and they can use them against you as well, like as we will see in this story. The other lesson we learn is you don't have to share all the things that happen to you. So like Yusuf alayhi salam told his brothers the dream and the interpretation, and or he told him rather that what his father had said in terms of the interpretation. He hadn't given him the interpretation, but this tells us that we should not tell everybody everything, right? Most of us know this. Actually, all the lessons are contained in here. Most of us know them. Instinctively, we do know them, but we don't practice on them. But this is something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us very clearly so that we do practice on them, right? So one of the lessons we learn is that don't share all the things that happen to you. So you don't have to share everything. People think that full disclosure, telling the truth about everything to everybody, or at least to somebody who you're getting close to, means that you're being truthful. That is not true. Many people cannot take the truth, right? Number one, they don't know how to take it. Number two is that they don't know how to process it. Once they have that information, they might turn against you, or they might judge you because of that, right? So, and this is very common. So be careful what you tell to other people, and you don't have to tell your story to others. You know, many times people have this idea that, especially women, they have this idea that if things happen to them, they feel like they have to relate it to everybody so that they can understand them and they can get sympathy from them, right? But this is a fallacy, because most people don't care about your problems. Most people don't care. At the time when they're listening for the sensation, they will listen, and then you don't know what they're going to do with that amana. They might take it and give it to somebody else and share it with somebody else who you don't want them to share it with. So they will not even keep it as an amana. So that's one of the first lessons that we learn, that don't share things, even sometimes your own siblings, right? Because this is, remember, this is about siblings, and sibling rivalry is real, right? So this is also something that we learn from this surah. Even real brothers and sisters, not, you might say here that okay, the father was the same, the mothers were separate, and they were half brothers, that's why they were doing this. No, even real brothers and sisters, sibling rivalry can come in, and this can cause a lot of problems. So be careful who you say what in front of. You should have this this meter inside you which tells you, I can tell this thing to this person and I know that it will be respected and it will be kept a secret. Or I can't tell this person because I don't know. Or this person I definitely can't tell because I know it's going to get all around town if I tell this person. So the one in the middle is the one that you have to be careful of. The one that you don't know, you don't tell because you don't know. Right? The other lesson that we learn is people will hate us for the good things that we have. So Yusuf alayhi salam had many good qualities, and his brothers, they hated him for that. Simply because of who he was, and these qualities had come from Allah. Allah had bestowed. He had beauty of the soul, and he had a physical beauty, and these were very apparent on him, that he was a very noble soul, and everywhere he went, people recognized him as a noble soul. But Allah had also given him physical beauty. He had half of all the beauty of the world, subhanallah. You think about half of all the beauty, and then you think about the rest of the beauty, the other half was given to the entire mankind. So you can take the entire mankind's beauty, and that was what was given to one man, subhanallah. And it's beyond our imagination how a person can have that much beauty, but Allah had given him that, and this is mentioned in the hadith. So from a young age, this was becoming apparent. So his brothers were hating him for things that good things that he had, and this is human nature too. That they will hate you for good things that you have, and you might think, well, everybody has them, but you don't know with which eyes somebody is looking at you. So your good things, you don't. And in this day of Facebook and putting everything out there and being out there is very dangerous, because we don't know who is looking with which eyes. And so even good things, you should not, if not hide them, then at least you shouldn't publicize them, and you certainly should not publicize them in front of somebody who doesn't have it. So don't talk about things which other people do not have, because that's a sure way to incite a hatred from somebody. And this can be things that you are not even perceptive of. Like you might be talking very innocently about your relationship with your child, for example, and you say, oh, this happened and he said this to me and that to me, and somebody else can hate you for that. So that's something very simple. So be careful. This is why in the hadith we've been told, be very careful with your mouth, because we cause many of our problems with our own mouths. So be careful what you say and who you say in front of what. Another lesson that we learn here is that you have to try to love your children equally. Now, the heart is the heart, and the heart doesn't love everything equally, and maybe you will have biases towards your children if you're very honest. However, we still have to show an equal love, and that's a very big distinction here, that you have to show that you are loving equally. Even if your heart is saying something else or it has its own biases, you still have to show that you love equally. And this has to be in word and deed and thought. And this is very important, because that in itself brings rivalry in children. If they detect from you as a parent that you're giving impartial treatment, and young children will say that very clearly in these words, it's not fair. They say that very, very clearly. But as they get older, then they tend to internalize it, and they will internalize it as different sicknesses inside them. So you as a parent, you have to show equality at every possible juncture, everywhere, everything. You have to show that. Right. So let's move on. So then, this is a conversation. We're going back to the conversation that the brothers have with the father. And the father, he relays his fears, and we just from there we said that if you have fears, then don't share them with everybody. Right. So the next verse, it says, verse 15. فَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا بِهِ, and they took him. So then they reluctantly, the father gives the permission and they take him. So they go out for this day, and together resolve to throw him into a dark well. So they had that plan already. They had that plan. So they find the dark well. And we sent revelation to him that you will certainly remind them of this matter when they will not realize. So Yusuf alayhi salam is put into this well. So they do carry out the plan, and they throw him into this well. And he's a young boy, and there's water in this well, but it's very shallow. So he's able to stand up in it. And then he finds a ledge and he sits down. And the brothers, they leave him there and they go. And it said, the verse is telling us that Allah sent him revelation. He's not a prophet at this point. So this revelation means a wahi, an ilham, an inspiration. He sends him this, and he tells him that there will come a time when you will remind them of this. So Allah's consoling him that don't worry. By this sentence, we're being told that Yusuf al-Islam in this well is being told that he is going to live, he's going to get rescued, and he's going to live to tell the tale, and he's going to be reunited with his brothers with the upper hand, because he's going to be able to tell them this tale, tell them the story of what they did. So this is consolation for Yusuf alayhi salam in the well. And then meanwhile, they came weeping to their father, verse 16, they came weeping to their father that night. They said, "Oh, our father, we went racing and left Yusuf with our goods when a wolf devoured him. But you will not believe us even though we are truthful." So they came with crying false tears, crocodile tears. They came crying, and they came to their father, and they used that same story against him. Look at what they did. They took his fear and they used that same story against the father, and they said, "Look, what you were saying, it came true that the wolf did eat him up." They came with false blood on his shirt. So they bought his shirt back, and they had put false blood on it. So what they'd done is they'd sacrificed the shirt, and they had put, a sheep, and they had taken the blood, and they had put the blood on the on the shirt, and they bought the shirt back. And Yaqub alayhi salam said, "But your souls have contrived this matter for you. However, I shall exercise patience without any complaint." And this is the Arabic of this is very beautiful. It says, "Fasabrun jamil." So I will have beautiful patience. This is where it comes from. This idea of a beautiful patience. Wallahu musta'an ala ma tasifun. I shall seek Allah's assistance against what you have devised. So when they came back with the shirt, now they they had come back with the shirt, but they had forgotten one detail. They had bought the shirt whole, so the shirt was not torn from anywhere. So Yaqub alayhi salam understood, because in the incidents that this would have happened, the wolf would not have been so polite as to say, "Please take off your shirt now so that I can kill you and eat you up." And then how would the blood get on it? So Yaqub alayhi salam was a very wise man. He understood exactly what had happened. And so he says to them, he says, um, "Your souls have contrived this matter for you. That means I know that this is not the truth. But right, you're telling me this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to exercise patience." And he was a prophet, remember. So Allah was telling him something too. So he says, I'm going to have a beautiful patience. And a beautiful patience for Sabrun Jamil is without any complaint. It's defined as a patience where you do not complain. That means you don't go telling people, oh, this is happening and that is happening. You say to Allah, you talk to Allah, and you put your matter to Him, and you let Allah deal with it. That means you're not going around talking about this with this person and that person, because people can help you unless you need help from somebody and you know they can help you. That's a different matter. But you're not just going around looking for sympathy or putting the other person down just because you need to do that. You feel a need to do that. And so this is what the father says to the sons. And verse 19 it says, وَجَاءَتْ سَيَّارَةٌ, and a caravan approaches. So as they had predicted, maybe they had, this well was on a way where the caravans were going. Maybe they knew that a caravan would come. And so a caravan comes, and the verse says, a caravan approached, and they sent a person to fetch water. He lowered his bucket and exclaimed, what luck, there is a boy here. They hid him as trading stock, and Allah had perfect knowledge of what they did. They sold him at the meager price of a few dirhams, and they showed no interest in him. So when the servant puts the bucket down, he feels a big tug, and so he calls the people. He says, look, there might be something, come here, I can't pull this water up. And so a few men tug, and what comes up? A beautiful boy comes out of the well, right? A beautiful boy who is smiling. He comes out of the well, and they see he is healthy and good, and they say, what luck, there is a boy here. And they immediately, when they see him, they see gold, because they are a people who are traveling, and in that time slavery was very common. So when they went to the big markets and they sold their slaves, they would get lots of gold and silver for it. And so when they see this, they see an opportunity, and Allah had perfect knowledge of what they did. So Allah knew what they were doing. So this was Allah's plan. So but He lets the plan play out. And so the brothers who have been watching this, because they come back the next day or the next day, and they are watching to see what would happen to Yusuf, so that their hearts can be at peace with it. And so they see that a caravan comes. And so when they see them take Yusuf out of the well, they come and they say, the brothers come and they say, they pretend that he is their runaway slave. So they say that this is our runaway slave, but we don't want him anymore. And if you want, we will sell him to you very cheap. And that's why the verse says that they sold him for a few coins, right? For a meager few coins, because they wanted to get rid of him anyway. Their plan was succeeding. And so they showed no interest in him. And so this caravan travels with Yusuf alayhi salam, and it goes into Egypt. So this was Allah's plan all along, to take Yusuf alayhi salam out of Palestine, where he is, and take him all the way up to Egypt. So this caravan travels with this boy, and he's shackled. They put him in shackles because he could run away. He's a slave, and they take him with him. And so there's a discussion about obviously people who take, in the olden days they used to do this, and still they're doing it. Remember we touched on slavery, human trafficking a while ago. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, it says in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah says, I shall be a plaintiff. That means I will bring the case against 3 people on the day of judgment. The one who makes a pledge using my name and then breaches it. That means if you take a pledge in the name of Allah, you take a promise and then you don't fulfill it, then Allah will take you up on that on the day of judgment, because you took His name to take that promise. The second one is the one who sold a free person as a slave and then consumed the price. So this human trafficking is an age-old game. It's been happening since men have been on this earth, and it's still happening. So Allah says that He will bring a case against that person. So the person who sells a free person and then consumes the price for it. Or the third one is who extracted labor from another and then did not pay him his dues. That means you took labor from another person. This is the point where we should be very careful, that if we hire somebody to do something, or we're a business and we ask, or a service and we're asking somebody to do something, then we should ask it within reason, and we should make sure that we pay them the full amount of what we have agreed, and we pay them immediately. That's another sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And this hadith is from Mishkat. So verse 21, let's go back to the story. It says, the person from Egypt who brought Yusuf told his wife. So Yusuf alayhi salam was put on this market, and there was a great sensation in this market. The rumor spread that there is this beautiful youth here from Palestine, and he is, he's very good looking, and he looks like a noble soul. And so the people who were selling him in the market, they were having a field day with it. And so the news reaches the Wazir, the Aziz of Egypt, and he's the Minister of Finance. So he's a very, very important man who's working in the court of the king. So he goes, and then he bids on Yusuf too, and he gives the highest price, and he wins the bid, and he buys Yusuf. So look at Allah's plan, that He has propelled him into one of the highest households of Egypt. He's been taken out of Palestine, but He's put him into this household of Egypt. And so the person of Egypt who bought Yusuf, the Aziz, he told his wife, take proper care of him. Perchance he may be of use to us, or we may take him as a son. So the Aziz had no children, and his wife, very famously known as Zuleikha, they both had no children. And so he says to her, and you can see that he must have been a boy, because he says that take good care of him, and this good care will come in the manner of an education as well, because he is educated as a son of a minister. So he got all the education to be a minister himself. So he's been educated in Egypt by the best teachers. So there's two things. He says that take proper care of him so he can be of use to us. That means in future he can be a minister and he can serve our country, or we may take him as a son. That means let's watch him. He looks like a very noble child. Possible that we might take this boy as our son. We can adopt him as well. In this manner, we granted authority to Yusuf in that land, so that we may teach him the interpretation of dreams. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that we gave him authority in that land. That means we established him. We didn't just leave him, but we gave him authority in that land, because he was being raised in the household of the Aziz, and then he was given the education of an Aziz. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying another knowledge that we're going to give him, we're going to make him into a prophet. And that's the indication here that we may teach him the interpretation of dreams. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that we're going to make him a prophet as well. When he came of age, we granted him wisdom and knowledge. So we did make him a prophet, Allah saying that we granted him wisdom and knowledge. Thus do we reward those who do good. Right? وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. So the word muhsin is being used, and we'll discuss this at the end of the story, inshallah, what muhsinin means. Those people that do good, who are virtuous. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling Yusuf alayhi salam virtuous, that when people are virtuous, they do good with their heart, Allah gives them good things. Right, so we're being introduced to the characters in this story now. So we've been introduced to the Aziz and his wife, Zuleikha. So Yusuf alayhi salam grows up in this household, and it's a very thriving household. There's a lot of people going in and out, and it's a very important household. And Yusuf alayhi salam is being educated, and he grows up, and he's very familiar with this woman, Zuleikha too, because they meet on a regular basis, living in the same house, etc. And he said that he grew into an extremely handsome youth. His beauty, and we should talk about it because it was legendary. It says it was the talk of the town. Ibn Kathir mentions this in his book. People referred to him as the most attractive man they had ever seen, and wrote poetry about him. His face carried immaculate beauty. And immaculate beauty, when we talk about beauty, if you've heard of the Fibonacci sequence, where it's that there's symmetry in the beauty. So perhaps he had a beauty which was more advanced than this. And the purity of his inner soul and his heart showed in his face, increasing his beauty. That means he had inner and outer beauty. People from afar came to the city just to get a glimpse of him. The prettiest of maidens and the richest of ladies wished, they desired to possess him, but not once did he show haughtiness or conceit. He was always humble and polite. So Allah had given him not just a physical beauty, But the inner beauty as well. And this discussion of beauty is also very important, because many times we judge people just on their outer beauty, but when we get to know them and we see the inner beauty, that's something else. So people can give different kinds of beauty to different people, but all these beauties were in the Yusuf alayhi salam, and they were also in our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But Yusuf alayhi salam's beauty was more apparent. It was a very obvious beauty. And the days passed, and Yusuf grew. Almighty Allah said, and when he, Joseph, attained his full manhood, we gave him wisdom and knowledge. Um, so we had given him wisdom in affairs and knowledge of life. So he was made very savvy of this life as well, because he was mixing and with these people. So he was getting lots of experience of being with people, and dealing with lots of different kinds of people. And he had knowledge of life and its conditions. He was given experiential knowledge as well. He was given the art of conversation, captivating those who heard him. So he was given a formal knowledge as well. He was given nobility and self-restraint, which made him an irresistible personality. These were gifts from Allah, that Allah made him noble, and he had self-restraint. He was humble. He was polite. His master soon knew that Allah had graced him with Joseph. His master soon understood that this was a gift to him. The Aziz understood that Joseph was indeed a gift for him. It wasn't the other way around. He understood that Joseph was the most honest, straightforward, and noble noble person he had met in his life. Therefore, he put Joseph in charge of his household, honored him, and treated him as a son. And now the wife of the chief minister, Zuleika, watched Joseph from day to day. She sat with him, talked with him, listened to him, and her wonder increased over the passage of time. So now we're going to enter another scene in the story now, where Yusuf alayhi salam is grown up and is living in this household. And so the verse says, right, the verse 23, it says, the woman in whose house he was attempted to seduce him to achieve her objectives. She locked the doors and said, I am telling you to come to me. He said, I seek refuge with Allah. Indeed, my caretaker has treated me, my Rabb has treated me honorably. And this is a verse of the Quran. He's saying, indeed, my caretaker, innahu Rabbi ahsana mathwaya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has treated me very, very honorably, and surely the oppressors will never succeed. So this is the argument that he gives to her. So what happens here is that the woman of the house, meaning Zuleika, she bolts the doors and she tries to seduce him, because she has fallen in love with him. She has fallen, it says, Ibn Kathir says, she could not resist the handsome Joseph, and her obsession with him caused her sleepless nights. She fell in love with him, and it was painful for her to be so close to a man, yet be unable to hold him. Yet she was not a wayward woman, for in her position she could get any man she desired. By all accounts, she must have been a very pretty and intelligent lady. And why would the chief minister have chosen her of all the pretty women in the kingdom? Although she bore him no child, he would not take another wife, as he loved her passionately. So it's saying that she fell in love with him, and this was an all-consuming love, and an infatuation. You could call it an infatuation. And this woman, she has all of these feelings, and so she tries to seduce him, and it's said that she bolts all the doors, and she calls him into his inner chambers, and she bolts the doors there too. And so he says, she tells him that, Haytala, come here, right? She calls him, and he says, I seek refuge with Allah. He replies, I seek refuge with Allah, because my caretaker has treated me honorably, and surely the oppressors will never succeed. And some commentators have said that this Rabb is meant, it refers to Allah. He was not referring to the Aziz. He was referring to Allah, that Allah has taken care of me from so long, and I don't want to be from the Zalimeen. I don't want to sin against my Rabb. And she was determined to achieve her objectives with him. Verse 24, and he also would have intended the same had he not seen the proof of his Lord. That means he would have fallen for this as well. In this manner, our fate has decreed the matter so that we averted evil and lewdness from him. Indeed, he was from our sincere bondsmen. And so this is, we know that the verse is telling us that he she's saying she was determined to achieve her objectives that she was trying to get at him. And it says he would have done that too. He would have been inclined towards her as well had he not seen the proof of his Lord. And so then Allah says that in this manner, so we averted evil and lewdness from him. That means we protected him and we saved him. And he was a prophet too. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected him. And he was from our ibadin and mukhlasin. He was from our mukhlis, our sincere worshippers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects those people that Allah wants to protect. And right, so just going back to some of the lessons very quickly, when the brothers throw the Yusuf alayhi salam into the well, we learn from there that there are levels of people in the world, right? There's a very big lesson for us to learn, that there are levels of people. There are good people and there are bad people, and there are levels of bad people and there are levels of good people. And so our human, once we understand that, then we have to become in a position to be able to judge that why is this person coming to me, what is the intention behind it, is there goodness in the intention, is there badness in the intention, and what level of badness or goodness is there. Because sometimes if it's a small level of badness, then we can let it go. If it doesn't really affect us, then it doesn't mean we break with those friends, right? Because we all have good and evil inside us. We accept certain levels and certain weaknesses from people. But if the evil is great and it can affect us, then we should be very vigilant of that. So that's a very big thing that we learn as well. And shaitan can come to us in the form of good advice, right? Shaitan can come, and he can come and give good advice, like the shaitan told the brothers that throw him in the well and throw him. So shaitan can come and make us do very evil things. So we have to be ever vigilant of the shaitan. And we can't always protect the ones that we love. We also understand this from this surah, that how Yaqub alayhi salam couldn't protect his son. He couldn't protect him. So we can't always protect the ones that we love. We can do as much as we can, but then it's in the hands of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns everything. We have to know that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns our children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns us. So we can't always protect other people. And if something happens, then we shouldn't put all the blame on ourselves too. And then another thing we learn about this story, what we've done so far, is how they come back with the full shirt which has blood on it and the shirt is not torn. So there's no perfect crime, right? There's no perfect crime in the world. There'll always be some flaws, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at some point will expose it. So we should be careful that and we should know that there is no perfect crime, that we might be doing something against somebody, we might be pushing them against the wall, we might be doing something, but Allah will expose us. At some point Allah is going to expose that crime as well. Do not fall for the tears for people. When people come to you and there's big tears and they're talking about somebody, look at it with wisdom. Many times we fall into this trap. Somebody will come with a story and there's lots of tears around it, and we can blame somebody who is actually innocent, or the other way around. It can happen. So be careful when you look into things, and especially if you ask to judge something, then be careful. Don't fall for the tears. There's a lot of crocodile tears in the world as well. And the other, then we'll do the other lessons afterwards, inshallah. So this is a long story, and we have only done up to 25 of the stories, but inshallah we'll speed it up tomorrow. But you've got the main foundation of the story, so we'll be able to go a bit faster tomorrow. And you should think about the lessons that we've done today. And most of the lessons are about judging other people, how we interact with them. That doesn't mean we go around judging everybody, but in terms of how people can take advantage of us, and evil can come from people. It's very important to uh, be cognizant of that, because Allah is teaching us these things in this surah. And we're going to end with that, and I'll see you tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.